Welcome to Industry Exchange 2018. And now please welcome to the stage MPI CAC President, Mr. Corey Fransway.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 7th Annual Industry Exchange and celebration of Global Meetings Industry Day. Today is a celebration of our industry. It's a candid conversation of crucial issues facing our profession and a time to raise our collective voices to tell the story of just how impactful the meetings industry is to the economy, culture, and advancement within our hometown of Chicago, our state, our nation, and quite frankly, across the globe. Meetings do mean business, and today is a powerful example of that. The landscape of our industry is constantly changing, and so is the world around us. Today, we'll take a deeper dive into some of the issues that affect all of us, both personally and professionally, and to discuss just how crucial it is for us to leverage our collective voices with strategic, coordinated messages. I'm so proud to be serving currently as the president for the MPI Chicago area chapter. It is very exciting to be standing here on the stage, looking out at more than 500 faces that are reflecting the amazing diversity that makes up the meetings and events community from all across Chicagoland. We're so thankful for the generous support and hand-in-hand collaboration of Choose Chicago, the amazing Wintrust Arena, and SMG Savor Chicago. In addition to these strategic partners, representatives from many of our local industry organizations had a role in bringing the event to life. Association Forum, Catering Executives Club of America, EDPA Midwest Chapter, IAEE Midwest Chapter, ILEA Chicago, MPI Chicago Area Chapter, PCMA Greater Midwest Chapter, and Site Chicago. And as many of you will not be surprised to hear, a lot of work went into planning for this day. Today's Industry Exchange is a wonderful partnership of these incredible, mostly volunteer-led professional associations which support our industry locally through education and networking opportunities throughout the year. Industry Exchange is our moment to gather us all together and to shine a spotlight on key issues affecting us all. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who invested time and talent to make this event possible. If you're sitting in this room and you're not a member of one of these industry associations, now is the time to join. Take it from me, who came to Chicago 15 years ago, knowing only a handful of people in the entire city. And today, the breadth of my industry network spans the globe, because I accepted an invitation and became involved. If you're serious about growing your professional network and building your business, there's no time like the present to become actively involved. By becoming a truly active member within your chapter and association, you'll change the course of your career and quite possibly your life. There's no better way to get noticed than to take on a leadership role within this amazing community. And I'm sure you're ready for the program to begin, but I do have to recognize two individuals who have helped Industry Exchange evolve into what it is today. Katie Callahan-Giobbi, thank you so much for your continued commitment to the success of IX and for being a catalyst to make this the Global Meetings Industry Day celebration for the city of Chicago. And to John Nahn, we're grateful for your partnership as well. Before we get started, I must give one last huge shout out to the amazing volunteers who worked day and night over the past several months to make today possible. In addition to all those who are seated in the audience who represented industry partner associations, please join me in a round of applause for the team who led the charge on behalf of MPI-CAC. Kathleen Clickett-Newsom, our VP of Education, Emily Yao, Director of Industry Exchange, and Amanda Jackson and Justine Rades, who courageously agreed to come back this year and co-chair our IX committee again. Today would not have been possible without the massive support of our in-kind sponsors. When asked to participate in Industry Exchange, without hesitation, they all said yes. They see the value of being a part of Industry Exchange and understand the strategic vision for bringing us all together like this. It was truly incredible the amount of energy and effort our sponsors put into today. Their dedicated staff members put in so many hours and rallied their resources to bring you this year's event. Lastly, I'd like to especially thank Freeman for once again lending their very talented team to help make the Wintrust Arena come to life as we celebrate Global Meetings Industry Day. Without further ado, please welcome back to the stage Bill Kubiak, Regional Vice President and General Manager for Freeman Chicago.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate that very much. Well, what he said. No, it's great to be back. And for those of you that were here for the previous event, I promise I won't repeat myself except in a couple of areas. I do want to be brief, so I just have a couple of notes going low tech this time. Really, I do want to echo what Corey said because it's so true, and it's the reason we're all here today, and that's Global Meetings Industry Day is a great day to bring us all together and recognize the value of our industry and really to do a shout out and recognize the people that are involved and a call to action to those of you that aren't. So again, I echo what Corey said. If you're not involved, get involved. If you are involved, take the next step. It's a great way, as Corey said again, to grow your career and take your association membership to the next level. Again, as you know, events like this don't just magically happen, and I do just want to do another shout out to the amazing team here at the Wintrust Arena who've been a delight to work with. I encourage you, if you have an opportunity to book some business here, it's a great facility and a great team to work with Shelley and David and the entire production team. Also to Scott Sura, our technical director, and Tony Sansoni, who PM'd this show, and the entire Freeman team, as well as all our labor partners from Local 2, 110, and 1220, who are all behind the scenes making it all happen. So let's give them a round of applause for that. Okay, quick Freeman commercial. You're going to get to use some of our technology here in a little bit with Freeman XP Touch, so you'll hear more about that in a minute. And just go to our website. We've got a lot of stuff on there. It's not just about what the services we offer. There is some great content on there that will help you with new ideas and trends in our industry that will give you ideas that potentially you could use for your next event. So please do take a minute and check out freeman.com. A lot of times people say, well, you know, Bill, we get asked to sponsor a lot of different events throughout the course of the year and it'd be impossible to do them all. So how do we pick? Well, this one's a no-brainer because this is the event where we get all our associations together for a common cause. And it's to elevate and call to action and to elevate our industry. So kudos to all of you for being here and being active. And you know, we feel that this is such an important event to be a part of, especially here on Global Meetings Industry Day. So that's why we sponsor. But the real reason we sponsor, is one of the sponsor benefits offered by the sponsorship committee was that if I sponsored this on behalf of Freeman, I got to introduce the moderator. That alone was priceless, and really why I said yes. So for those of you that don't know Katie Callahan-Giobi, Katie is an industry icon. I've been able to call her a friend, an industry colleague for many years. She always gives year over year and is just really she does a great job in her day job, but she does so much on behalf of the industry throughout the years. We couldn't thank you enough for all that you do. So I'm going to turn it over to Katie and to the rest of the program.
Thank you so much. Freeman has been such an exceptional partner for Industry Exchange, not just today, but really for many of us throughout the year. We really do thank you for your leadership and your generosity. Thank you, Bill. Welcome to Industry Exchange 2018 and to Global Meetings Industry Day, Chicago style. It is an honor to once again be your MC and moderator for today, and it is a pleasure to once again partner with Choose Chicago and David Whitaker and his fine team. Please help me thank him one more time. Now, before we get started, I would like to do a quick reminder about emergency procedures, very important topic. First of all, I would like you to look around and see where your nearest exit is. If there were to be an emergency, I ask that you please stay calm and listen for directions. I also am going to ask that you please celebrate responsibly later on when we do our celebration at the reception in just a little bit. Now, before we get started, I'm going to ask that you take out your phones. Everybody take out your phones, please. We are going to be using the Freeman XP Touch audience response system, as Bill mentioned. And I need you to please log on to this website. So I'll give you a moment to do that. I'm going to come back to you in just a few, and we're going to have a couple of questions. Now, for me, the best part of Industry Exchange is indeed this collaboration between all of the industry organizations. Regardless of which one you call home, I think you can agree that we are the meetings and events industry here in Chicago. We are the designers, we're the innovators, we're the hoteliers, we're the set designers, we're the meeting professionals, we are the lighting experts, we're the transportation gurus, we are the destination specialists. We are the ones that are creating and producing the finest meetings and events, not only in Chicago, but around the globe. You know, there's an old Chinese proverb that says, may you live in interesting times. Well, isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Regardless of your political views, I think we can all agree that we are living in some very interesting times right now. From state and federal legislation to changing technologies to the global economy to increased competition to increased expectations from all of our stakeholders, we as meeting professionals are being asked to do more and to be more than ever before. It seems to me in this highly politicized, overly connected, hyper-competitive world that we're in, you know what? It is dizzying at times, isn't it? How do we find our voice? How can we make a difference? What really matters? And how can I help? Well, this year's Industry Exchange is all about empowerment. It's about how each of us can take control of our words, our actions, our destiny, and help our industry, indeed help ourselves, to create a more productive, a kinder, a gentler, a more connected world. So we have three amazing speakers today, and they're going to talk with us about three extremely important topics facing us in the meetings and events industry today. But before we introduce our first speaker, please pull out your phones again. You probably all have them in your hands. Assisting us today, as I said, in today's dialogue is the Freeman XP Touch system, the audience response system. This system is going to allow me to ask you questions. We will have a moment where you're going to be able to ask us questions as well. So on your mobile device, let's start with a couple of simple questions to get some practice. Are you ready? Is everybody logged on? Terrific. Question number one. I am a planner, supplier, student, or other. Please vote. So 60% supplier, 30% planner, 10% other. I want to meet you at the reception. Excellent, excellent. Let's go on to question number two. Question number two. I work for an association or an AMC, a corporation. You're an independent planner professional in some capacity. You work for a hotel, restaurant, or other service provider in our industry. Or perhaps you work for a CVB or a DMO. Please vote. Okay. Excellent. So we have a lot of restaurant and hoteliers or other service providers in the room. Wonderful, 24% corporate meeting planners, terrific. Very good, and 7% CVB and DMOs. Wonderful, let's go on to the next question, please. How long have you been in the meetings industry, the meeting and hospitality industry? If you're under 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 20 years, or like me, 21 or more years in this business. Please vote. Wonderful. Okay, first of all, I want to acknowledge the 13% of you that are under 2 years in the industry. Let's give them a quick round of applause. Thank you for being with us. And I also want to get a shout out to all of those of us who are 11 and more years in the industry. There's quite a few of us in the audience, so really, really interesting. Great, thank you for that. So we know that meetings and events are important. They bring people together to learn, to share, to grow. Yet more and more, travel and meetings are being used as a political weapon, and more destinations and organizations are being caught in the crosshairs. Please help me welcome to the stage a very smart man who's going to tell us all about what's happening in the world of the weaponization of travel and how we can take action. Please help me welcome to the stage the Chief Advocacy Officer of Destinations International, Mr. Jack Johnson.
For inviting me. There we go, the topic. This is a postcard from the 1967 World Exposition that was held in Montreal. One of the best things that my parents ever did was, like, every summer for 2 weeks, every year, we'd go, like, pack us up in the car, pack up the trailer with camping gear, and we would just, like, go off to points unknown. In 1967, the destination was Montreal. Really cool place if you're a kid. It was like a future vision of the world. But it was also the first time in my whole life that I actually met a lot of people, thousands of people, who didn't look like me, who didn't sound like me, didn't eat like me, dressed differently from me. It was amazing. But as we went through all these buildings and all the pavilions and all the exits, and we got to ride camels and elephants and all that stuff, by the end of the week, I was beginning to realize that I stopped looking at them as how they were different, but more or less how we were more alike. It was actually pretty amazing because we were all actually trying to get, in all those exhibits, trying to get from A to B. Starting different places, maybe taking different routes, but we're still basically trying to get to a better world. This is particularly true in the lower right-hand corner. That was the Soviet pavilion. Keep in mind, it's 1967, right? So we're in the middle of the Cold War, got an arms race going on, we got a space race going on, the Russians are our mortal enemies. So I kind of entered that one with a lot of trepidation. First and biggest takeaway, though, is that I learned that Russians actually don't look like this. Thanks to Rocky and Bullwinkle, my concept of Russians was this. And that was the great thing about the World's Fairs. It just blew concepts that I had, stereotypes I had, ideas that I had, right out of the water. I learned things that were new to me. I learned I liked things I didn't even know existed before. It was really, really amazing. And because of that, that's one of the reasons I love this quote so much. Because that's what travel is kind of all about, this change that can happen to people. People, as a rule, don't like change. We actually fight it. When we say we like it, we actually don't. And too often, change comes as something out of conflict, or someone leaving, or someone hitting rock bottom. But every once in a while, we put ourselves in these situations and we just kind of open it up, change, and it just kind of washes over us, and we see things differently. We view things from other people's point of view. We change our opinions sometimes, or we find things we didn't know existed that we love. And that's what travel is so amazing. It's why we all enjoy what we do so much. Now, we spend a lot of time talking about ROI and all the jobs we create and all the taxes we drive and all that economic activity we generate. But that's really kind of byproduct of what we do. It's kind of a measurement of whether we're doing it really good or not. Really that creating these opportunities, a destination where you can go to and this change can happen, this experience can happen, this learning can happen, that's really what this is all about. It's absolutely amazing. But this travel like this is actually under attack. There are people out there who, instead of using travel as an end in its own right, are turning it into a weapon. And they're doing so in order to change policies or laws or any other civic activity. But they're doing it not in a way of getting people together to learn from each other and to see each other's point of view. They're doing it basically by telling people not to travel, by holding us hostage, and in the process, causing a lot of us to be collateral damage in this fight. Now, it happens from several different ways. Public advocacy groups could do it. They were the major forces behind the boycott of North Carolina, which is still continuing. Cost North Carolina billions of dollars, still costing them money. That's not a good idea. It can be run by government, local government, county governments, states. The state of California currently bans travel by their employees to 7 states. There are 6 states that ban travel to North Carolina, 5 to Mississippi, and California can't go to South Dakota, Kansas, Texas, Tennessee, or Alabama. It's insane. And then it can also, in this media world, of social media world, where everything's kind of instant, can actually be started by a single person. David Hogg, tremendously impressive individual, went through something that was incredibly awful. Him and his peers are doing some really amazing work in the political arena, particularly around gun control. But with one single tweet, he set a shudder through the whole Florida travel industry. Luckily, he moved on to other topics and other tactics, but with one little tweet, he could have started a travel boycott of Florida. Now, we at Destinations International oppose travel boycotts. We don't think they're that effective. We think they harm the hospitality industry greater than they hurt anyone else. And we really honestly question whether they actually work. But we wanted to answer that question, so we went out and did research. So we went out into the field and surveyed travelers. These are people who traveled at least once in the last year and planned on traveling at least once again in the upcoming year. So we got leisure travel, business travel, meeting travel all in there. Asking the question whether they are aware of travel boycotts against states, what we're looking at, because this was around the time North Carolina was at its peak. And 57% said they were familiar, but the key number here is the 31%. Think about it. The most highly publicized boycott or ban that was out there in North Carolina, had only 3 out of 10 people could actually name it. We looked at the word cloud and things that were coming up were like Florida, they're not being boycotted. Arizona, Indiana, they used to be boycotted. Trump plays a lot on this. It's a very political thing. But there's a lot of mixed things, mixed reasons. So people are really unclear on why boycotts are actually happening. We asked them whether they support boycotts. Big number here is 15%. Only 15% of the people said they strongly support boycotts. The rest are kind of sideways. Maybe I kind of support it, maybe I don't support it, maybe I oppose it, maybe I have no opinion. We actually asked them, do you think boycotts work? Same response. Only 15% of the people we talked to actually believe strongly that boycotts work. So think about it. A lot of people aren't paying attention, and we only really have a small group that actually strongly believe in boycotts and think they work. So we asked them who they thought it hurt. Hospitality industry and businesses, they knew that. We actually did a deeper dive on that, and they came back, they even knew that local businesses, local small-owned businesses within our industry were the ones that were hurt the most. But the key number for me is number at the very bottom there, 40%. The one group that probably could actually change the law that they're trying to change is politicians, and yet people believe they are the ones that are least affected by travel boycotts. We asked about alternatives. Are there other things that we could do that would be better or more effective? And the key thing here is that all of these, every one of these alternatives that we threw out there tested as good or better than travel boycotts. People thought the best thing to do was to basically get in discussions, go to the place and contact the politicians. In other words, they were saying, we should get together, we should meet, we should travel. So we asked who they would listen to, and they listened to a lot of people. The state tourism boards, and again, this was a survey that's based around state bans, popped up as one of the most trusted sources. Now, this is a very politicalized area, and as a whole, Republicans tend to oppose boycotts because they're not seeking them, and Democrats tend to support them because it's the liberal issues that are being, they're lobbying against. But when it came to who would you listen to as a trusted sources, tourism boards were as popular with Republicans and Democrats, and they were the most popular group about people who didn't know whether they supported or thought they worked. So we took this one step farther. This is a digitalization, a segmentation of Twitter. Political conversations, they all happen on Twitter these days. Each one of these dots represents an organization or a person. The lines that connect between them is the interactions that are happening between them. Pretty picture, look good on the wall. Did a deep dive on this. What we found, a couple takeaways, highly political. A lot of people talking about Trump, either pro or against. But what we found are these three categories, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but they're basically in the upper right-hand corner, the Trump people and traditional conservative Republicans who are living together. Not exactly the same group, but they live next to each other these days. The biggest group down there, left-leaning moms, left-leaning dads, and liberal activists. It's kind of like the soccer moms that we used to talk about. Very big group, easiest ones to talk to. And then over to the left, Black Lives Matter, minority activists, and we're actually pulling in a little bit of the youth pop culture in there. These three groups, we know, represent the majority of the conversation that's going on, and the people who are definitely affecting the conversation that's going on. And these are the three groups that in the end we'll actually want to be talking to. All right, I said this is highly partisan. Right now, Republicans are opposed to bans because they pass the laws, and the Democrats are for the bans because they're fighting the policies that the Republicans passed. Trust me, this will flip. Looks like it's flipping on sanctuary cities. Democrats are going to be banning travel to places that oppose sanctuary cities. We did a scrape of all the social media for the last year for all the governors in the United States. And what I love about this is Andrew Cuomo and Scott Walker of Wisconsin. I can't think of two people who are more opposites politically. And yet, both of them found a way to talk about travel promotion and the value of travel as part of their platform, as part of their brand, as part of their belief. Scott in Florida, Hogan in Maryland, Schneider in Michigan. Those are three Republicans who are either in split states or Democratic states, and yet they are out there talking about the value of travel, the value of promoting travel to their destination. This doesn't have to be a partisan issue. We can find a way to get out of that abyss and actually form a bipartisan coalition. All right, so after going through all of this, we settled on our goal, which is very simple and very honest. Our goal at Destinations International is to end travel boycotts, travel bans, as an acceptable tool of political change. Big and lofty. But we're developing a strategy to implement that actually will hopefully do this. So our next steps, happy to tell you about. First of all, we're going back into the field to do a survey with the place where we actually started, a deep dive survey with meetings and event planners, but we're also going to go out and talk to venue operators, convention centers, and the likes. We're going to, at the end, have two new toolkits, one that's aimed at destinations and venue owners, but we're actually going to focus on meeting and event planners. We want to give you the tools to the industry that will allow you to push back, tell you why you should push back, how you should push back when your target is a boycott, and basically how to implement those 6 alternatives that we tested, step by step by step, and how you can do that if your organization or your meeting feels they must do something to make a political stand against an issue. And the best part, this time out, we'll do it as a multi-organizational approach. U.S. Travel and Meetings Means Business has already signed on. We're in conversations with others, including MPI and PCMA and ASAE, and the hotel folks. In the end, I understand this is going to be a big campaign. So we're going to launch a public advocacy campaign. We're going to go back to Twitter. We've identified those 3 spots that we think we can interact and engage in conversation. We are actually going to enter the mainstream press. We're going to meet with those advocacy groups, HRC, Human Rights Campaign, ACLU, NAACP, and actually work with them. We understand that travel boycotts are simple. Travel boycotts are easy to just throw out there. So we're going to have to explain to them that A, they don't work, B, we have an alternative. It's just as easy and it's more effective. It's a big haul, but we're going to do that. We've actually already started outreach at NAACP. And we're going to actually go out and do old-fashioned lobbying. We're going to go to California, we're going to go to New York, going to ask them, work with them, lobby them to repeal their bills and their executive orders. It's our intent to take this big and take it national. Now, whenever I usually lay this out, most people get this really polite look. They look at me in the face and say, that's really great that you're doing that. But do you really think you can? In fact, even one of my own supporters, the head of the Charlotte, North Carolina Bureau, always starts the conversations with me, but picks up the phone and says, hey, Jack, I know this is probably like a lost cause, but can you do anything to get the New York executive order lifted? And I keep thinking about that, and I just refuse to accept this is a lost cause. I love this quote. This is a cause that we just haven't won yet. Now, a lot of people actually do know me here. I was involved in reforming McCormick Place. That was a lost cause. Merging the Chicago Convention and Tourism Bureau and Chicago Office of Tourism, that once was a lost cause. There's a lot of things we have worked on in this industry that are lost causes, but they become causes that we can win, and this is one of them. But like those battles in Chicago, there's something else I need, and that's why I need you. So we are going to launch this public battle this summer after our annual convention, hit high level around Labor Day, but I need to start building now in terms of the coalition. And I need all of you. I need you to come to our website, destinationsinternational.org, either now or take a picture and do it later, and sign up to be a Destination Ally. We'll keep you informed on what's happening with the issue. We'll keep you informed. You'll be the first to receive the new research that we're doing on this. We're also doing a lot of other advocacy work in the destination field. You'll have that available to you. And when the time comes to launch this as a full scale, we'll be ready with you to actually once and for all end travel boycotts, end travel bans, and for us to stop being collateral damage. Thank you so very much, and I just want to say it's great to be back home. Thanks.
Jack, thank you very much. That was really very compelling and a very important topic for all of us. We have time for a couple of questions. Does anyone have a question for Jack Johnson? Yep, do I see a hand up?
Back here.
I can't see, sorry.
In the middle.
Yep. Thank you, Lindsay. We have a mic coming to you.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I want to clarify what you said at first. States are banning their residents from traveling to
Not
other
banning
states?
residents, they're banning their employees. So if you're an employee of the state of California, and that includes the colleges and universities. So for instance, the basketball players that were in the NAAC tournament and were going to have to play in Kansas, had to raise their own money to get there because they could not use state funds. State bureaucrats, state legislators can't travel to attend a meeting where you would hopefully learn and become a better state employee or bureaucrat or whatever. They can't travel. California and those other states refuse to reimburse any travel costs or approve the use of any travel money to those states.
Thank you for the clarification. That's terrible. We need to get the media all over this.
Yes, thank you, I agree.
Any other questions for Jack? Jack, I have a question. It feels like it's getting worse.
It does. I thought we were actually going to get better when they sort of had that quasi-North Carolina repeal. But no, actually it seems to be getting worse. As we're following the conversations on Twitter, people are almost as if travel boycott is a knee-jerk reaction to them, and they immediately go to that. And that's why I think we need to raise the profile on this. We actually have to make the case for it, and we have to really show who it hurts. But we also have to show that it really rarely ever really works. People talk a lot about how well it did work in North Carolina. It actually didn't. The governor's office changed. They won by a very narrow margin. But the legislatures, the guys who actually passed the bill, no legislative seat flipped in that election. In fact, they drew a line in the sand and said, we're not going to do it until the only single segment of our industry that actually does seem to have clout here, NCAA or the NBA or NFL, till they actually weighed in and said, we're not that we're just pulling stuff, we're never coming back. That's when change happened. So I got to figure out that mix. I got to figure out how to get them to that point without actually banning us to travel. So yeah.
So I have one other question. So we are meeting professionals, and you know, we have to go back, and many of us, and I don't know if you would all agree with me, but you may be dealing with this topic with your board of directors or with your senior management, or perhaps in your own departments, in your own, you know, discussions. And I guess, how do we have that conversation within our organizations to say, we do want to go to this destination, we don't want these travel bans to impact the way we're conducting ourselves and our business? That's a tough conversation to have in some organizations.
It is one to have. It's actually difficult for us. I mean, Destinations International is actually a 501c6 association of destination organizations throughout the world. We have hosted meetings in Tennessee. We are hosting meetings in Charlotte, North Carolina, and next 2 weeks from now we'll be in Bermuda. We have members who have actually picked up the phone and said, hey, we don't want to go because of this law or whatever like that. And you kind of have to talk them through this whole concept of what travel does. Don't ever forget the massive power that we have with travel. Travel can change minds. Travel can change the way you look at things. Travel can open a whole new world to you. And it's really important to get back to that emotional appeal, almost that ideological reason why we support travel, why we maximize, why we promote travel. Because that's the core. Because when you get to that point, you really tear down all the arguments.
Yeah, so true. Thank you, Jack. It's a real pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Sexual harassment is not a new topic, unfortunately. Recently, it has taken center stage, not just in politics and in Hollywood, but close to home as well. Our industry is not immune to sexual harassment, and I'm sad to say, it's not immune to many of us on a very personal level. Joining me on stage to talk about this incredibly important topic, a very personal topic, is an industry veteran who has been vocal on this issue and many others for many years. Our good friend, the chief strategist and founder of Eisenstadt Associates, Ms. Joan Eisenstadt. Thank you for being here. Thank you. Please. Please. Joan, thank you for being here.
Katie, thank you. And I thank the group that put this on. This is one of the sadly, in my opinion, few of the events going on around the country and the world that has content. Too many of them are purely celebrations, and I think that as part of our celebrations, we need a call to action. And you've heard Jack talk about it, and I'm going to certainly talk about it as well.
To get started, though, Joan, I know today is a special day.
It is. Today is Yom HaShoah, and for those of you not familiar with Yom HaShoah, it is Holocaust Remembrance Day. It is important to people around the world. It is not just important to people who are Jewish or people who are LGBTQ. It's important to so many people who were discriminated against and murdered. And what's interesting to me is that it's about honoring the victims of mass murder. What I find interesting is that we're going to talk today about, you and I, about victims of sexual and other harassment. And it is pervasive in our industry. We didn't ask this question, but I'm hoping that some of you saw the Time magazine from this past January that honored the people speaking out, those who were victims of sexual harassment. Interestingly, of those, 9 were women who worked at a particular, I won't name names, particular hotel in New York, and one was one from a resort in California. And so our industry is very much at the heart of what we're dealing with and very much has an opportunity to do more. And we're going to talk about what we can do, what it means to each of us individually, and what it means to the industry at large, so that there is a sense of action when we leave here. At least that's my hope.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for that opening comment. Joan and I are going to have a conversation up here, and we want to start by asking you a question. So if you'd pull out your phones one more time. We'd like you to answer this question. Have you been a victim of sexual harassment in the workplace or in a professional setting? Yes, no, or I'd rather not say. Now keep in mind, with this Freeman system, we had asked that it be completely anonymous, so we will not be able to track the answers back to any individual. Thank you. Thank you for being honest on that question. Joan, it strikes me 41% of the audience has had some interaction with sexual harassment.
Here's what I find, I would say, even more interesting. And I think that we have a vision, partly because of what we've been taught and told of what sexual harassment is. And I think if we called it a little something different, if we looked at it differently. So I'll give you an example. Early in my career, I was MPI's representative to what was then the Convention Liaison Council, then CIC, now EIC. At my very first meeting representing MPI, I was put there by MPI to speak up. There were, I think I was one of 2 women, and each organization had 3 representatives. At the first break, after having been outspoken on some issues that we were dealing with, at the break, someone, a male in our industry, not a whole lot older than I, but older, came up to me and patted me on the head and said, "Honey, when you get a little older, you'll understand."
What?
And so I view that as sexual harassment because he's attacking me partly because of my age, but by calling me honey, the respect went out the window. And so I think if we begin to think differently, if we look at our interactions, a second piece of that is in conversations with colleagues who are with hotels, with DMOs, who are meeting planners, what I have found is the level of harassment is often not understood. In other words, there is, and I can say this because my generation was part of that, there was a sense of flattery if you were a woman and a man came on to you or said something to you. When I wrote a blog about this, I put out in the industry that I wanted people who had had an experience to write to me. And what I did is I masked it so that they weren't identified. There was maybe 1 or 2 cases that it would have been indicative if they identified as a man or a woman. What we don't think of is that men are subject to this too. And so I think that as an industry, we haven't had this conversation in an appropriate way. We haven't looked at what influences how we operate, what it means at a meeting, in a professional setting, in an office, as an industry, and how we're going to deal with these issues. I shouldn't say we haven't. There are some places that have, and we will talk about that.
Yeah, it seems to me that we have some unique vulnerabilities in our industry because of what we do.
We have incredible vulnerabilities. The other thing we have is, I remember years ago, a friend came with me to an industry event. He was not in our industry. And he said, "I think this is what Hollywood must feel like." He said, "There's all this kissing and touching, and I don't understand it." He said, "Isn't this a business event?" And one of the things that is said by those who do training in this area is that it's very simple. Instead of just going up to someone and kissing them or hugging them, to say, may I hug you? It doesn't take very long to do that. I know that in our industry, many people say, well, I'm a hugger. I need to do that. And we are social. We come together. This event, we come together to see each other. That's part of why people are here. It's part of why we come to chapter meetings. It's why we go to national meetings. And so we are vulnerable, and we're vulnerable in the sense of the work that we do.
So Joan, so my question is, you just said something that is really, so okay, Bill Clinton, we had Charlie Rose, we have Matt Lauer, we have
Steve Wynn.
Steve Wynn. I mean, have we learned something? Are we further along in this conversation than we were even just a couple years ago?
I'd like to say that we are. And as I look at the people who've been called out, who've made the big headlines, it's mostly been men. It's mostly been entertainment and politics. Our industry, other than one example and then one maybe, has really not had this conversation. I haven't seen policies come forth from industry associations on how to behave at a meeting. I haven't seen announcements from a stage or behavior modeled that says this is what we'll do. I see alcohol free-flowing at events. Those of you drinking today, I think there's alcohol. I'm going to ask that you consider your behavior generally, and then of course my risk management side says drive safely. And so I think that we are paying lip service, except that there are, at cities like Chicago, and I will say that I'm thrilled, there is New York and there are other places that are passing ordinances and laws for panic buttons.
Tell us about that. I don't know if any of you have read recently this ordinance that has just passed, right? So please tell us.
Well, it's interesting. So in looking at all of this, and because I was coming to Chicago and because this is new, I had some wonderful conversations with the Chicago clerk's office. I learned how Chicago operates. And I had great conversations with Unite Here. And you'll see in a little bit more about that. What I think is really interesting is that what Chicago did, let me back up for a second. What I know that in our industry, that people who work in it as meeting planners and otherwise, poo-poo unions. I know that. I get some of the frustration. I also know that without them, housekeepers who are the main target in our industry of sexual harassment, of people opening the door to the housekeeper naked, men masturbating in front of women housekeepers or maybe in front of men housekeepers. These are people who are working alone. They meet the criteria of people who are easily harassed, and it's happening. And so I know that what made me very sad was when Seattle had proposed this, it was a ballot initiative. Our industry fought this initiative, saying that it wasn't necessary. And panic buttons will be worn in the city of Chicago by people who work in housekeeping specifically. Although if you read the ordinance, I think it could be for those of you in sales, because if you think about it, you are alone often in a room, showing guest rooms to all kinds of clients, and the opportunities, back to opportunities, are great. So what it means is they will have more protection. It doesn't mean that the person being harassed is going to confront the person harassing or doing what most of us, I hope, consider inappropriate behavior. What it means is that they can press this button that they'll wear, and security will come to their aid. It's been interesting to read, too, that there are some proposals. A chef wrote about what they're doing in the restaurant, because the restaurant industry is also facing massive numbers of harassment suits. We're seeing chefs of name that are identifiable to most of us being called out. And so what they're doing is within a particular restaurant, they're in essence grading people, customers who are frequently there, and telling what their grade is, the red, yellow, green, and whether or not it's safe to wait on them. And so that there is assistance. And there's another piece of this. I'm going to go back. I'm going to come back to panic buttons, but it occurred to me, I would ask for a show of hands, but I can't see you that well, and I probably don't want to know the answer. Some of you may know who Vivek Murthy is. He is the immediate past, I'll save you the time of trying to Google it. He's the immediate past Surgeon General of the United States. He has put forth that a major health issue is that we're lonely. And if you're following again the news, in the United Kingdom, in Britain, they now have, don't have the title right, but it's in essence a minister of loneliness to help people get over that. So in the research I did, I found a lot of issues around how touch, and we know it's healing, touch is important. So it's coming up with a way to do it both. So the panic button. It was passed in Seattle overwhelmingly. The ordinance passed here very well. It is on the table in Las Vegas. It is still being fought by our industry. And we who work in this industry, Jack talked about what we can do on the issues he talked about. I'm going to suggest that this is critical. If we want to continue to have good service in the industry, we want people who feel safe, right? We want to feel safe as a guest in a property, in a restaurant. We want to make sure that people are safe. And so in order to do that, we have to be vocal about what will happen.
Yeah, so true, so true. Yeah, I was actually just chatting with one of the general managers in Chicago at the Choose Chicago annual meeting, and of course, he said this is an important issue for them, and I can imagine it is going to, in many ways, help all of the employees in the hotel. So I think there is the support for it, Joan. I think that it also is an expense issue, I'm sure.
It is an expense issue.
And an implementation
here's
issue.
What I would say, and I'll use Steve Wynn because it's been very public. Steve Wynn has a lot of money, a little less now than he did. And Steve Wynn paid out over $7.5 million to someone. We've seen the number of members of Congress, the US Congress, who use taxpayer dollars to get out of lawsuits. We have a culture that has been sadly set by the person who was elected president that says it's okay, I'm not going to use the same words, it's okay to do what was done. And so when that culture exists, we've got, and someone who owns hotels, and so we've got this mixed message. So is it better to pay for panic buttons or pay a $7.5 million lawsuit? I mean, to me, it's obvious. Is it better to keep employees because they feel safe? Is it better to have a reputation? You know, as a planner, we can, in our RFPs, ask hotels if they have panic buttons, because not all hotels do. In New York, it's only the union hotels. And so we have that ability to influence that decision.
So Joan, we've touched on a lot of different topics, and unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time today. But we've talked about alcohol at events. We've talked about the line of sexual harassment and where that is, and I think, quite frankly, where we each draw it, right, where our own comfort level is. We've talked about code of conduct and code of, acceptable behavior. I guess my question, and panic button, what troubles you the most? What is the most troublesome point of this entire topic for you?
That we're not having this discussion at every one of these GMID events today, that we are not implementing policies and talking about them. The reason, there are two reasons. I'm always a teacher. That you got a handout for this was to take notes, because we learn better when we take notes by hand. The other is with a lot of resources, including where to go to get help, including 2 references for policies, including where men can be active in this. And I have to do, I promised, my quick thank you to Kevin Hinton, who called me to talk about this issue from a male perspective, about the respect issue, about what we need to do as a community. And he has started on Facebook a group for men, not just in hospitality, but called Men's Space. I hope I got that right. And I hope that the men in this room and others in our industry will talk. Because again, our industry has male housekeepers. We have male servers in restaurants. We have male meeting planners. We have male salespeople. We have to do this together. So what bothers me most is that we're making like it's no big deal. We're talking about it as if this is somebody else. And I think that that's inappropriate.
So Joan, I know we have one last slide that you wanted to show.
I did. It was really wonderful in talking with the clerk's office and with Unite Here, and getting a lot of the background for Chicago specifically. And they sent me the clip from the Sun-Times, I believe, and this was it. And I thought, well, it appeared in the paper. Isn't that great? And so as I listened, I wasn't in the room, but I was listening to the earlier part of the program about Choose Chicago and how it's being marketed. To me, to market it as a safe city to work, a safe city to have meetings, beyond the safety that those of us who teach risk talk about, that we know that if we're coming here, that people who work in this industry are cared about, they're respected, that power is not used to over people to say, you won't get this job, you won't keep your job unless you give in to me. And so to me, the cake was incredibly representative and a good idea.
Yeah, it talks about taking action. And Joan, you also have given us a handout. Does everyone have a handout on your seat? If not, we have plenty of copies.
And I want to add one quick thing. One of the things that has not happened, not as much today as I would have liked or in the other cities, is that I would hope that you are all, if you are eligible, registered to vote. I don't know Illinois law. I don't know if you are registered when you get a driver's license, and if, like me, you don't drive, then maybe not. What I hope is that you will look at all of these issues, and especially this one, because it affects every single one of us. It affects us individually, it affects our organizations, it affects the people we work with, it affects our children, grandchildren, other relatives. There is no one that Me Too doesn't touch. I guess I should say, pardon the expression. And so it's a big deal. So I also offered to those of you here at the reception, if you'd like, I have some extra Me Too buttons that you're welcome to have, and also Time's Up Now, which is, if you don't know, a fund to help people who cannot afford to get a lawyer, and it's there to help you get the assistance you need in order to carry a case. So those of you who have been harassed, and if you're now thinking about what am I going to do about it, there's help.
Joan, you just hit the nail on the head. There is so much in this topic, and it is such a personal issue, not just for ourselves, but for our children, our sons and daughters, and our granddaughters and grandsons. And it is something that we have to think about. I love that you have given us even just some simple tips on how we can be more aware of our own actions and our own words.
And I'm hoping that in addition to the alcohol, drink responsibly, I hope at the reception when you see someone you know, or that you just have met, that you simply say, is it okay if I hug you? It'll take barely a second to do it, and then I think that if we can start today, we can begin to spread the word and make this industry responsible.
Joan, we are so fortunate that you took the time to fly to Chicago to be with us today.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joan. One more round of applause, please, for Joan Eisenstadt. What an compelling and important conversation and great takeaways. Please hold on to those handouts and take them with you. How do you explain to your family and friends what you do? How many of them really understand how you make a living? Well, Please help me welcome to the stage our next speaker, the CEO of Strategic Meeting and Events, and an expert storyteller, Ms. Christy LaMagna.
I will start by saying that when I was a child and I was called a storyteller, it usually meant I was about to get grounded because it had something to do with perhaps not telling the truth about something. So I wish my mom were here to find out finally that being a storyteller might actually be a good thing, and that I turned it into a profession instead of something to get grounded for. So I love to talk. I love to talk to people. Anyone I meet, I like to have a conversation with. So yesterday as I flew here, I struck up a conversation with the woman who was in the middle seat next to me, and I thought, well, as long as she's practically in my lap, I might as well get to know her. So her name is Diane, and we found out, okay, Diane, where are you from, and where was she going, and why was she traveling? And the next thing that came up in conversation was, well, Diane, what do you do? And Diane said to me, I'm a scientist. So I don't know what reaction you just had in your head or what you thought about the word scientist, but in my head, I'm not thinking blow-off career or slacker. I'm thinking, wow, this woman's really smart, and she's got a big job. And I asked her about what she did, but as she told me, what I realized was the minute she said scientist to me, I wrote her story, and I was already impressed. So she told me what she did, and then comes the, well, what do you do? So I said to her, well, I own a company called Strategic Meetings and Events, and I'm a master strategist. And what that means is I work with organizations and help them create experiences that influence what their target audience thinks, says, and does. I work with companies to accelerate their sales cycle and to bring their marketing messages to life. She's like, wow, that sounds like a big deal. At first, I thought you were going to say you were an event planner, but they just plan parties. It's like, oh, okay, so funny, because I plan events. And she said, no, 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 my best friend is a planner. She's been planning for 20 years. I've known her since high school. That's not what she does. And I said, well, what do you think she does? And she says, well, she plans stuff, and she travels. I said, well, what kind of stuff does she plan? She's like, meetings and stuff. She just travels, she plans stuff. So in 20 years of knowing, or in being in the industry and knowing this woman for as long as she had, the only sentence this woman has cobbled together about what her friend does for a living is she plans stuff. So I'm thinking, hey, this is, sadly, this is not as uncommon as it should be. So I said to her, do you have a minute? May I tell you a little bit more about the difference between an event planner and an event strategist? And the good news is when someone's in the middle seat and you're on your way to Chicago from New York, she could say no, but I'm going to keep on talking. So I figured I can now have a captive audience. I'm going to explain to her what it is that I do for a living. So I continued to talk to her about the difference, and that's one of the things that I'd like to talk to you about today. Now, I know we have a lot of suppliers here, about half of you are suppliers. So I do want to just start out by saying when I say event planner, I'm talking about the entire hospitality industry. They've only given me 20 minutes, and if I keep giving everybody's titles, I'll run out of words before I even get to my point. So we're just going to say event planner, because all of us are part of the hospitality industry, and we all interact. So one of the things that I would imagine many of you have noticed is that the careers that we have chosen as hospitality professionals are seen as hobbies and not necessarily as professions that people go into and study for and that there's responsibility behind. And why would I say that? These are images that I have either seen live or that I found on the internet. I'm going to help you if you can't read it. If you look at the car, this was in a parking lot, and it says event planner, custom baby clothing line, and t-shirts. So I'm excited because this person can plan the event, can get the clothes. Are you kidding me? Like, oh, okay, so this is clearly a hobby. The ultimate event planning training bundle, 10 courses, only $399, and you're going to be an event planner. Okay, this is a problem, okay? So what I think about is when this woman told me she was a scientist, do you think there are any folks with, signs in the back of their car that say, I'm a scientist, I can walk your dog, and I can wash your car, call me at. So there's just such a misconception about what we do. And as hoteliers and as suppliers to planners, I think you can absolutely say, if not out loud, but in your silent voice, how many of the people who you work with, who pass through your doors or who come to you for event help and your services are not necessarily qualified to be doing what they're doing or aren't utilizing you to your best potential. So how do we change that? Because we're not a hobby, and what we do is incredible. Meetings mean business. We've just talked about how important the tourism industry is. What we do is incredibly important, but why do people think that because they plan their wedding, they can be a meeting planner? How many of you have ever been at a networking event and you say, what do I do for a living? And you say, I'm an event planner, and they say, oh, you plan parties for a living. No. Or, I don't want to brag, I planned my wedding 3 years ago, and ever since then, I've been thinking about becoming a planner. You're like, really? And so how many of you have had an experience similar to that or something like that, okay? Okay, almost everybody's raising their hand. Now let me ask you a question. How many of you in that moment have taken an opportunity to say, you know, it's funny that you would say that, but do you have a minute? I would love to, if you're interested, I'd love to tell you a little bit actually about what event planners do and what that is. So what happens is, have you ever been in a situation where someone walks up to you, my name is Christy, somebody will call me Kathy, and you know, if it's just something casual, do you care, and you don't correct them, they leave thinking your name really is something else. So when that person says to you, oh, could you pack me up in your suitcase and take me with you because you get to go to all these exotic places, and you don't correct them, they leave believing that you've just agreed with them and that what they've said is true. So part of what happens when we tell our story is all the opportunities we miss to actually tell our story and to educate people. So here's a photo. Based on the survey, many of us have been in this industry for a long time. So you know that the difference between these two pictures, one is of a stewardess. Stewardess is a word that was retired at this point a long time ago, and if you ask the younger generation, you can tell I'm getting old, millennials don't necessarily know what a stewardess is. But when you think about when they were in vogue, the catchphrase was coffee, tea, or me, right? Stewardesses were sky waitresses. Stewardesses were there for your visual entertainment. They served drinks. They flirted with the passengers. Now, same industry, same job, a little more safety involved. Those people have evolved into flight attendants. So all those years ago, if you pinched a stewardess's behind, sorry, Joan, it used to happen, still happens, she'd probably laugh and giggle and flirt because that was part of her job. I'd like someone now to try and pinch a flight attendant's butt because she will karate chop them in the larynx and they're out for the rest of the flight, right? They are not there for your visual entertainment. Those ladies are there to keep you safe. So how does, and there are some of you in the audience who are thinking, I don't want to be a stewardess, I don't want to be a flight attendant, I want to be a pilot. And that's great and that's fine, but what I want to talk to you about today is how we as an industry change our story and how no matter what your title and what your job position, we all come together to work together to make this a better industry to be in and to help people understand what we do. So how do we do that? How did the stewardesses become flight attendants? Because they're still pushing the cart down the aisle. They're still serving soda. They're still there doing pretty much the same job. 9/11 has changed their role a bit, but essentially, these are the same people doing the same job. So what do we do and how do we change that? So let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever ended up either as a planner or working with a planner who actually isn't a planner? So I've met people and seen people at these events that are admins or from accounting or from HR or from operations, and because they were in the right place at the right or wrong time, suddenly they're planning the company's meeting. So you as suppliers end up dealing with whomever it is who may not be qualified to plan this job. And I wonder, you know, there's so many dollars involved in this. If the CEO made the decision to have someone who is not a planner plan that meeting, if I were to say to that CEO, so this person, Mary, who's planning your annual sales meeting this year, would you let Mary cut your hair? He'd say, no, Mary doesn't know how to cut my hair. So you're going to put her in charge of one of the most powerful vehicles you as a company have. You're going to put that in the hands of someone who doesn't know how to plan a meeting? And the problem is people don't understand. We as an industry don't always understand. the general public doesn't necessarily understand, meetings are the most powerful tool a company has in its arsenal. Meetings accelerate the sales cycle. Meetings bring marketing messages to life. Meetings, so think about how much money people spend in marketing, and marketing is a wonderful thing, but think about this. Have you ever watched a TV show and there's product placement? So somebody's drinking a can of Coca-Cola, somebody thought to reach out to that show, have their product placed there. That's a lot of money, that's a lot of eyeballs. But no matter how much money they spent, that's a flat medium, that's two-dimensional. Meetings are the only three-dimensional embodiment of a company's marketing message. Everything else is a flat medium. I, Mr. CEO, as an event strategist, am going to find out what your goals are, and I'm going to create a vehicle that is going to influence what your target audience thinks, says, and does. And as a result, I'm going to shorten your sales cycle, influence behavior, bring your marketing message to life. That's what we do if we do it correctly. Some people talk about that we deserve a seat at the table. The truth is, event strategists found the table, ordered the table, measured the room for the table, supervised its delivery, placed it, and put the water in the center of the table. I don't want a seat at the table, I own the blasted table. I'm the reason the table is there, okay? And that's what we are. So when we talk about what we do, and as hoteliers and as providers, here's the thing. If I say to you, as a CSM, what do you do? And you say to me, I work with planners, and I help them implement logistics for my property. No, you don't. You work with planners and bring your property and their vision and their goals together, and you are the vehicle that takes the message and the goals of that meeting and helps bring it to life. When I send you an RFP, I appreciate that you need to know space, dates, and rates, but you also need to understand what is the goal of this meeting, and if the person on the other end of the RFP didn't tell you that, you need to ask. Because when you find out that this is a meeting about sales, but it's a company that's coming together, and it's two different organizations, perhaps you don't want to put your guests now in two different towers, because this is all about people coming together. So if you know the goal of this meeting is all about integration, and you know your property, you're going to say, well, you know what, I'm going to put everybody in the south tower because everybody can fit in that tower. So instead of having people in different towers throughout the building, let's make sure that every single aspect of this meeting speaks to your goal. I'm doing a welcome reception, and it's all about networking. Okay, well, you know what? I know that you want to do this out by the pool, but may I suggest, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but we could use our portico share, and here's why. You're like, you can? You know that space better than I do. Find out from me what I'm there for, and then make your building the best vehicle to produce those goals. Because I'm an expert in what I do, but you're an expert in what you do. If you're AV, if you're floral, if you're another vendor that helps with meetings, why are we here? What do you need from me? And it's not about you need a flower arrangement. Where are those florals going? How often are you going to use them? Why are they there? What is the message you're trying to convey? Because if I'm doing a meeting and the end of the evening is times are tough, no one's going to get raises, budgets are tight, and the centerpieces are roses and extravagant, does that match the message? But I, as a planner, if I'm not necessarily thinking about my goal, think, I love roses and this will be pretty. That doesn't match. You have to have every single thing you do for your event needs to be goal-driven. So what we do as event strategists is when someone says, I'd like to plan a meeting, I'd like to host a meeting, your first question, what is your goal? After you find out what that goal is, you need to reach out to your target audience and find out what's their goal for coming to the meeting. Because I want to say X, but you need to hear why. If I want to influence what you're saying, thinking, and doing, I need to tell you something that's important to you. So if I came up here and just spoke to you about things that weren't important to you, I'm wasting your time, I'm wasting my time, I'm wasting this incredible opportunity. If I give you a call to action that inspires you, something will happen because of it. So when you're having your meeting, the first thing you should do is have a discovery session, and that's talking to, if you're a hotelier, talk to your client. Why are you having this meeting? What are your goals? How can I help you? What has worked in the past? What can I do to serve as a vehicle to help you get to those goals? As a planner, tell me why you're having this meeting. Then I'd like to poll top, middle, and lowest performers and find out what they need to hear from you at this meeting. Because what I want to say may not be what you need to hear, and it's not about me. The meetings are about your audience and influencing their behavior in a way that is going to be appealing to you. So it's a give and take. So if I, as a CEO, decide that my employees are spending too much time on the road and too much time doing paperwork, so I'm going to implement $1 million technology system. And the sales meeting is going to be all about, atta girl, spent $1 million on you guys, we're getting some new technology. And I didn't take the time to find out why sales are down. And sales are down because I, as the CEO, am not attending important meetings, and the prospective clients don't feel like I value them, so you're losing business because of that. I announce this new software. You sit in the audience and are disgruntled. I leave frustrated because I just spent $1 million on these guys and they're ungrateful. The audience goes home frustrated and says, well, that was a waste of 3 days. I leave saying, see, meetings are a waste of time, and the planner who's just done all this work is like, are you kidding me? Like, everybody's angry and I just worked my butt off. It's because we're not coming together with a shared vision, goal, voice, and plan. So we as an industry, if we want to go from event planners to event strategists, or from customer service managers to client strategists at properties, we need a shared vision. We need a shared plan. We need a shared vocabulary. So what is the difference between a planner and a strategist? How do we do that? It's not just telling our story, it's we have to live that story. So one of the things that I was hoping that you would help me with today is, if you pull out your phones again, if we all band together and decide that we are going to be strategic and change our narrative, which is more than just words. So I had said this to someone earlier this morning. Have you ever heard of a petroleum transfer technician? Do you know what a petroleum transfer technician does? It's a gas attendant. It's a classy way of saying it's a guy who pumps gas. He transfers the petroleum from the tank into your car. This is not about just changing your title. This is about thinking strategically. The end is what you begin with. What is your goal? How do we achieve it? If my CEO comes up to me and says, I am going to cancel this year's sales meeting, this year's incentive trip, it is incumbent upon me to say to that CEO, with all due respect, I understand that you're going to save $500,000 by canceling that meeting, but let me help you understand how much money you're going to actually have disappear from your bottom line if we don't bring this group together. This is the most powerful form of communication, sales and marketing that you have. For you to cancel this is going to cost you a fortune. I am the three-dimensional embodiment of your marketing message. Why would you walk away from that? I am going to influence what your target audience is thinking, saying, and doing, as opposed to, okay, I guess I'll go cancel that hotel contract. We need to know what those words are. We need to be able to measure value. This is a much longer conversation than 20 minutes, but our goal today was to get you inspired and for you to get involved. So if you text the words "get strategic" to 64600, there's a movement that we have created. It is something that, the irony is, the people who are in this audience are not necessarily the people who need to hear this message. But what's really important is you are the people who can help be the ambassadors of the message and help make a change. So if you join the strategic movement, there's a Facebook page, there's a LinkedIn page. This is something that we as an industry have to come together to do in order to accomplish this goal, unless you're okay with being party planners and not getting a seat at the table. What I'd like for your call to action to be is post an idea on one of those sites and start a conversation with someone in the next 7 days. What do you do? And I would challenge you not to use the phrase, I plan events. So if I take the words, I plan meetings and I plan events out of your vocabulary, can you describe what you do? Because that's not the essence of what you do, it's so much more. So share this story in the next 7 days. Feel free to reach out to me. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, call, write, carry a pigeon, don't care. This is the most important thing in my career right now, is to share this message and help change the industry. I can't do it without you. I have about a minute left, so does anyone have any questions, anything that I can quick clear up in the little bit of time that we've got remaining? You can't all raise your hands at once because there's only so much time. Okay. So you can be the narrator of your story. Where do you want to go? What character do you want to be in that story? How do you want your ending to work out? This is our opportunity to make those changes. The plan is here. The path is here. We just need to choose to take up our role in it and make those changes. So that's the call to action that I leave you with. Be strategic, Happy GMID Day. Thanks.
Advice. And the good news is joining us in the reception, so you have a chance to connect with her there. Please let us thank all of our speakers today. I thought they each did a really tremendous job. So we do want to thank each and every one of our speakers. And remember the call to actions. We hope you feel more empowered. We hope you feel you have your voice. And we hope you felt that this session was beneficial. And now it gives me great pleasure, as we close out our program, to welcome back to the stage a true professional, an industry leader, a Chicago icon, and genuinely one of the nicest men that I know, Mr. Tony Lorenz, the President and CEO of Allied PRA. Tony.
One more round for Katie and the team. Thanks, guys. A lot of years, Kate. A lot of years. Meetings Mean Business Coalition, it's an organization really unlike any other. Came together a few years ago, 2009 is when it first came together, and it came together in a moment of crisis. Our job was to pull together our organization so we could do a better job of getting our message out to the greater business community. And since then, we've been pretty busy. We've got over 500,000 contacts in our database, 8,000 Twitter followers and growing, I am sure, given the success of today's event. And we have GMID, which today is running on 6 continents, 35 countries, and there's thousands of participants live and online. So a big day for our industry. And what that means is the industry is as strong as ever, building momentum every single day. Together, we underscore the incredible impact we have in 3 categories: economic impact, commercial impact, and personal impact. The economic impact is significant, as you've heard a bit earlier, $330 billion in direct spend. That's an 18% growth rate relative to 2012. Almost 2 million meetings nationwide here in the US, 250 million participants, which represents about a 10% growth rate relative to 2012, and then 6 million international participants, which drop about $18 billion in the US alone. The commercial impact is undeniable. Organizations of all sizes across all verticals are increasingly investing in business events because of the business development, the client retention, the employee engagement, and other metrics which are favorably impacted by well-crafted events. Personally, you'll need to look no further than extraordinary leadership development programs and courses, incentive programs, and others, all of which equip and encourage outsized performance of the individual to understand how business events play a leading role in our personal development. So it's with these reference points we can safely say our industry delivers, as just referenced, the most powerful media on the planet, face-to-face events. We cut across all verticals, demographics, regions, and as a community, we activate all shapes and sizes of business events, from 65,000 people right here in Chicago every May for the restaurant industry to scores of training events happening today and every other day of the year around our many signature hotels. Chicago. I'm a Chicagoan. It's a unique, proud, extremely hardworking city, as we all know. We have assets, intellectual assets, infrastructure, geographic proximity. We have heart, and we have a service-minded approach that really, I believe, makes Chicago the greatest city in the world to host business events. And I've got a lot of offices around the country, so don't tell anybody I just said that. And then we have consumer events. I got 2 kids, daughters, teenage daughters, and unfortunately they go to Lollapaloozas every year. I try not to pay attention, but the consumer events here are incredible. You may have heard, if you were here earlier, about the 50th anniversary of Special Olympics coming in July. Encourage you to attend. Amazing. The Friends that Choose Chicago, World Business Chicago, Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, and so many other organizations all promote Chicago every single day, and then the growth of business events in our industry follows, undeniably. So let's give a round of applause to these organizations for carrying out that torch. We do appreciate it. They uncover the resilient fact that industries, businesses, individuals from all over the world, they simply love coming here. That's all there is to it. We make the best bets we can in life. One of the big bets we make is where we live. I think most of us here are Chicagoans for a long time. many of us all our lives. And in that bet we made a decision to be here. And in being here, you being here today, it really means you're not only a Chicagoan, you're part of the industry that we all serve. So we want to thank you for that. We want to thank you for taking part in this day. And then in summary, I encourage all of you to find the right path to further your engagement at MediaTVbusiness.com, or feel free to give me a ring at 312-543-5162, and I will have you about so at this point, please help me welcome to the stage each of the industry organizations who have come to create Industry Exchange, please. And I'll reel these off. A lot of great organizations. Thank you.
Do you want me to hold the,
Sure. There it is.
come to the stage?
So
All
we
of
have
our industry organizations.
International Live Events Association,
Hold your phone.
Experiential Designer and Producers Association, Catering Executives Club of America, Society for Incentive Travel Excellence, International Association of Exhibitions and Events,
Go all the way in.
my personal favorite, PCMA, MPI, and Association Forum. Please, let's ready to give them a round of applause. Good? All right, guys. So right between this moment, there's a beer on the other side, am I right?
Yeah.
Yes? Yes, please?
There is a beer on the other
Okay,
side of
great.
that curtain.
So in conclusion, while GMID is built to put a bright light on the power and importance of business events, here today in this beautiful new arena in the greatest city in the world, we want to all recognize each other for the role you play to help events move hearts, minds, businesses, and entire industries forward. Thank you very much, and have a great night.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, all of our industry organizations. Thanks to all of you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to the committee, to Choose Chicago, to the Freeman team. Thank you all very much for being part of our day, and please join us in our celebration right next door.
Drop top Porsche, rollie on my wrist, diamonds up and down my chain. Cardi B straight stunning, can't tell me nothing. Bossed up and I changed the game. It's my big bronze boogie, got all them girls shook. My big fat, got all them boys cooked. Went from dollar bills, now we popping rubber bands.